western world, and must watch the demons as he was buried first. It's a funny thing. Thank you. Well, my friends, it is great to be in a great city, Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I really do think, with all the momentum that we've got, we're going to make Las Vegas red. We're going to make Nevada red, and we're going to turn Nevada red for Donald J. Trump and the American people who are in this race. Now, we got a couple of special guests to shout out before we get started. I want to give a special shout out to, I think, one of the best candidates anywhere in the country this cycle. You guys are lucky to have the great American hero, Sam Brown, running for the United States Senate. We got to get Sam in the United States Senate, because I really do believe Donald Trump is going to be the president. I'm going to need the vice president. We're going to need all the help that we can get, and Sam Brown is the right man for Nevada. We've also got the great Lieutenant Governor Anthony. Where's Lieutenant Governor Anthony? Thank you, sir. And we got a guy who's doing a very good job, the state GOP chairman, Michael McDonald. Where's Michael at? Thank you, Michael, for your hard work. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today is housing and how unaffordable housing has gotten in the state of Nevada. It's a disgrace, my friends. We've got a lot of Americans who can't afford to buy a home, can't afford to pay their rent, and it's because Kamala Harris has failed to do her job. But we got to talk a little bit about Kamala Harris and her interviews before that, because let's have a little fun. Let's have a little fun before we talk about public policy. I'm telling you, I think that maybe in her heart of hearts, Kamala Harris is actually rooting for me and President Trump in this race. Because why would she keep doing all these interviews where she just goes out there and makes our case for us? I swear, I told the president yesterday, President Trump, I said, sir, my goal is every time I do a major national media interview is to pick us up 50,000 votes. But I think Kamala Harris, she gets us 100,000 votes every time she opens her mouth. Now let's step back for a little bit. Let's step back a little bit and appreciate just how tough of a job Governor Tim Walz, my Democratic colleague, has. He's got to go around and defend Kamala Harris's record. And that is, my friends, that is the indefensible. He's got to try to pretend that Kamala Harris didn't raise the price of groceries by 25%, but of course she did. He's got to pretend that she didn't increase housing costs in the state of Nevada by 38%, but of course she did. And he's got to pretend that she didn't open the American southern border, but of course she did. So I kind of feel bad for Tim Walz, if I'm being honest with you. I know maybe I'm the only person in this room who does. But the thing about it, I've got the easiest job in American politics. I've got to remind people that Donald Trump delivered the fastest rising take-home pay in 40 years in the United States of America. I've got to remind people that when Donald Trump was president, inflation was 1.5%, the lowest it's been in a generation in the United States of America. And I've got to remind people that Donald Trump built the wall and secured the American southern border. So if it looks like we're having fun in the Trump campaign, and it looks like the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign is a little bit sad, I think it's because they're terrified of having to continue to explain their record to the American people over the next 13 days. Just think about this. Kamala has been running, if you just watch the Kamala rally, And you hear her say, well, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. Yeah, on day one, she'll say, we're going to tackle border security. And anybody with a lick of common sense is saying, Kyle, look, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing the whole time? Stop talking about doing your job and go do your job. But I think it explains why these interviews are so tough for Kamala Harris. Because they ask her very basic questions about what is she going to do differently, what is she going to do in the next 4 years that she hasn't done in the last 4 years, right? How is she going to solve the problems that she, in fact, helped create? And my favorite is when they say, well, what is your specific plan for how you're going to lower the cost of groceries and housing for American families? And she'll say, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. Or you know, when I worked at McDonald's, I made the hash browns. And by the way, I don't even know if that's true. Where is the evidence that she actually made the hash browns at McDonald's? I haven't seen that evidence. I think Donald Trump has worked at McDonald's for longer than Kamala Harris has. But come on, let's get serious a little bit because yeah, we're having some fun. And well, okay, we'll get serious in a second. I want to say one more thing. So I saw it was either yesterday or the day before. We were on the airplane coming to Nevada, and I saw this clip of Kamala Harris at some event. And you know the big theme of the first month of their campaign was that they were the joyful campaign. And my friends, the joy is gone. The joy is gone from the Kamala Harris campaign. I was watching her, and she was kind of scolding people. She was scolding people for thinking that Donald Trump is funny. But she really was. She was like, how can you dare have a sense of humor about American politics? It's one of the things I love about my running mate is he does have a sense of humor. You can fix the country, but have a good time while you're going around and campaigning across the United States, right? But as she was sitting there scolding, I couldn't get this thought out of my head that she wants to be the president of the United States of America, but there's nothing presidential about scolding your fellow citizens. And it kind of hit me that what she was acting like was a vice principal who had just called you into the office because you were having too much fun at school. And I think one of the big questions we have to ask our fellow Americans is, over the next 4 years, do you want a president who is fighting to make your life more affordable and to make your country more peaceful and prosperous? Or do you want Kamala Harris who's going to scold you when you're having a good time? I think we know the answer. We want Donald J. Trump. We want to have a good time, and we want to fix the country in the process. Now, I want to talk about an issue that is particularly important to Nevadans, and look, this is a huge thing I care about. I'm the first millennial on a major party presidential, vice presidential ticket, 40 years old. Now, I used to go around and complain because I turned 40 a couple months ago, and I used to complain about turning 40, and then somebody would come up to me and say, I just turned 70, so shut the hell up about how you're mad about your age. So I stopped talking about that. But here's the crazy thing is my generation, I'm speaking particularly to folks in my generation and a little bit younger, Donald Trump and I, if you work hard and play by the rules, we're going to fight for your ability to afford the American dream of homeownership. You ought to be able to own a home if you work hard and play by the rules. You ought to be able to afford a decent place to live. On this campaign, and rightfully so. I think it's maybe the biggest crisis confronting the United States of America, and we'll talk about the effect it has on public safety and the effect that it has on our social services. But let's start with talking about the fact that when you open the border and let 25 million people into your country, you drive up the cost of housing for American citizens. This is simple supply and demand, my friends. We got to do two things to lower the price of housing Two things to lower the price of housing for Nevadans is we've got to build more houses and we've got to deport the illegal aliens so that American homes go to American citizens. Now, our friends in the media don't like to do this. They like to talk about building more homes. And by the way, we're going to build millions of new homes when Donald Trump is president. Here's how we're going to do it. First of all, we're going to drill, baby, drill, lower energy costs, and that's going to make it easier to build homes. We're going to stop the ridiculous regulations that make it harder for our construction companies and our workers to build homes in the first place. And the third thing we're going to do, especially in Nevada, is we have got so many acres of federal land that are being totally unused, but we could build houses on that federal land and make it more affordable for American citizens to afford a good life. That's what we can do. And by the way, you can open up some of those lands while still protecting and preserving our beautiful natural parks. You know, Kamala Harris wants to say that you can't do both of these things at the same time. You all know there's a lot of federal land out there that isn't being used for anything, but it could be used for American homes, for American citizens. So let's change that. But it doesn't matter how many homes you build, my friends, if you let in millions upon millions of illegal aliens who shouldn't be here, we're not going to have enough homes for our people. Nevada has a shortage of about 70,000 affordable housing units. Think about that. That's 78,000 American families who should be able to get into a nice home but can't because of Kamala Harris's policies. And here's the thing. When you bring in 25 million illegal aliens, and I think that's about the number that we have in this country, and you gotta put them somewhere. And oftentimes we're putting them up in first-class hotels at the expense of the American taxpayer. Donald Trump and I have a different approach. American homes for American citizens, and that is how we rebuild the American dream of home ownership in this country. Now, we talk about illegal immigration, and I do think that it is the biggest driver of the unaffordability of housing, too, but there's something else about illegal immigration that we've got to talk about, and it's the effect on public safety. Because, you know, I'll tell you a little story. I was in Valdosta, Georgia, this is probably 6 weeks ago, and Valdosta, if you've seen in the news, it was hit pretty hard by Hurricane Helene, so spare time to say a prayer for folks who were affected by that storm. There's still a lot of people who are recovering and rebuilding. But I was there before the hurricane, and they took me into the interdiction room, which is where they've got all the marijuana, the fentanyl, everything that they've actually gotten from the Mexican drug cartels. And they showed me a box of candy, and I said, "What's that doing there?" And they said, "Oh, that's actually illegal drugs." And I said, "Wait a second, that looks like Sour Patch, Nerds candy. Like, what is that doing there?" And they said that the cartels have figured out that if they disguise drugs as candy, it makes it easier to import into our country. And of course, all of us know what's going to happen. An American child is going to find a bag of that candy on an American playground and is going to open a piece of candy and pay for that with their lives. And that is disgraceful, and it's disgusting, and it's happening because Kamala Harris opened the American southern border. You know what Donald Trump is going to do? We're going to finish the wall, and we're going to deport. We're going to deport the people who shouldn't be in this country anymore. Right now, thanks to Border Czar Kamala Harris's open border, right now there are 425,000 criminal illegal aliens in the United States of America. That's more than any Marines out there. Double the size of the United States Marine Corps. That's crazy. And that's not happened through some act of God. That's happened because our own government isn't doing the job of protecting American citizens. We've got thousands upon thousands of kids who are the children of illegal immigrants who are in our public schools in Nevada. And of course, what happens when you've got teachers who've got to focus on kids who don't even speak English? That means that Nevadan children are getting the short end of the stick and are not getting the education that they deserve. And of course, we know that when you let in hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants into states all across our country, and certainly into Nevada, and we give them free access to health care, Emergency room wait times go up. Access to hospital services goes down. We are making our own citizens poorer, less safe, less healthy, and less prosperous because Kamala Harris cares more about illegal immigrants than she does about the citizens of the state of Nevada. My friends, that's going to stop when Donald J. Trump is president. I promise you that. And for what it's worth, I don't begrudge people who want to come to the United States of America. They got to go through the proper channels. I don't blame any child whose parent brought them into this country illegally. I blame Kamala Harris for opening up the American southern border. We got to kick her out of there and get a president who believes in border security back in the White House. Now I agree. Now let's talk about something else, which is the economy. My friends, I believe that when we re-elect Donald J. Trump, the next president, we are going to unleash a golden age of prosperity in Nevada and all over the United States of America. And it's worth in some ways comparing and contrasting the economic record of Kamala Harris with the economic record of Donald Trump. And also comparing the plans that they have for how we're going to move forward as a country. Kamala Harris is saying that I've never seen this in my life, a politician who is going around the United States of America bragging that she's going to raise taxes, bragging that she wants to let the Trump tax cuts expire, saying to all of you, hey, elect me and you're going to pay a lot more taxes. I don't know who does that. It doesn't make it, normally even the politicians who plan to raise your taxes at least lie to you and tell you they're going to cut them, but not Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going around telling you she wants to raise your taxes. And here's what President Trump is going to do. We are going to cut taxes for American families, and we're going to penalize companies that are shipping our jobs overseas. That's what we ought to be doing. Here's another difference. Kamala Harris wants to buy oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world, some of the worst and most vile people in the entire world. She'd rather buy oil and gas from them. Donald Trump and I want to buy oil and gas from American workers in American territories, and that's why we say, drill, baby, drill. Kamala Harris wants to give Medicare and Social Security to illegal aliens, which, by the way, would bankrupt those programs and throw a generation of our senior citizens into poverty. Donald Trump wants to protect Social Security and Medicare, and it starts with sending illegal aliens back home and not giving them free benefits. And if Kamala Harris is rolling out the red carpet for the illegal immigrants in the United States of America, Donald Trump has a different message. Pack your bags, because in 4 months you're going back home. Now, here's the problem with what Kamala Harris has done to this economy. You look at what's going on right now, and it's funny, if you pay attention to her messaging and what she says in these interviews, she can't quite figure out whether she wants to promise to change the policies or if she wants to say that the inflation crisis is over. And sometimes she'll say that. She'll brag about how inflation is much better thanks to her policies. Is inflation better out there for families in Nevada? You know, credit card delinquencies in our country have gone way up. About 10% of credit card balances in the United States of America are delinquent right now. About 8% of car loans are delinquent right now. You have Vice President Harris bragging about how good the economy is, and then you have American citizens who can't afford to pay their bills. I'd like to have maybe not just a president like Donald Trump who is smart about what's going on in the country, not just a person who knows that the American people who are suffering, but a person who can look at what's going on in the United States of America and say, we can do so much better. We can, my friends. We just got to get Donald Trump back in the White House. So let me say just a couple more things here, and then we'll take a few questions from the reporters, and then we're going to go to Reno from here. So this is a good Nevada day, and we're excited to be here. But here's the thing that we got to remember, is that a lot of our fellow citizens right now, we're having fun at this event, and we're having fun on the Trump campaign, but a lot of our fellow citizens are hurting right now. And I want to talk to you just about a couple of people that I've met on the campaign trail just in the last few weeks, people whose stories really drove home how much Kamala Harris's policies are failing the United States of America. I met a woman, she's a retiree, and her husband is soon to be a retiree. Both of them are sort of at the end of their working lives. They're raising their grandchildren because the woman's daughter died of a fentanyl overdose. And that's true of a lot of families, and it's true of my family. My grandmother raised me because my mom struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of my early life. Now, this woman told me that for 40 years, she and her husband, in good times and bad, they had this thing that they did, and it was their special thing. They would do steak night on Friday. Every Friday, in tight times, in prosperous times, they would do steak night. And I'm not talking about going to a fancy steakhouse. We're in Las Vegas. I'm not talking about going to STK. I'm talking about going to the grocery store and buying a nice steak and having that be their thing that they did together. We all know it's these little rituals, right? These are the things that make life worth living. We've all got them in our families, and it's why we work hard. It's why this is the greatest country in the world. But last year, she stopped doing steak night. They stopped doing steak night because the price of groceries has gotten so unaffordable, and of course, times were especially tight because they've got a couple of extra mouths to feed that they didn't plan on. And my friends, we got to do better. In this country, we got to make sure that if you work hard and play by the rules, you spend your entire life working your finger to the bone, you ought to be able to afford steak night on Friday night, and that's what we're fighting for. I mean, so many young Americans, and if you look at the statistics, but also if you just talk to young families, the biggest barrier to people, our young people starting families, having babies, is that they're worried about the cost of housing. So the more that housing gets more expensive, the more that young Americans are going to decide to either wait or to not have a family altogether. And what a horrible indictment of the policies of Kamala Harris that our young people are choosing not to have families because they're worried about affording a baby under Kamala Harris's economy. And with my message to those families is, we're going to do better. Donald Trump is going to do better. Kamala Harris broke this country's economy, and Donald Trump will fix it. And so I want us, because I know a lot of you are volunteering. A lot of you are knocking on doors. A lot of you are doing the things that we need to do to get out the vote. And we'll talk a little bit more about that after I take some questions. But I want you to remember what we're doing it for. Because as fun as it will be to beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and trust me, I will enjoy it more than any person in this room when we beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats on November the 5th. Remember what we're doing it for. We're doing it to give the American people a government that actually looks after their interests. We're doing it to create enough prosperity so that that woman and her husband can afford steak night on a Friday night. We're doing it so that our young people can afford to buy homes and start families. We are on a crusade to give the American people the leadership that it deserves. And on November the 5th, we're going to do exactly that. Thank you. God bless you guys. Appreciate everything. Now, we'll take a few questions from reporters, and then unfortunately, we're going to have to hit the road and go to Reno, but let's start. It's too bright for me to see you, so hopefully somebody back there has a microphone.
Senator, thank you very much for coming to Las Vegas. If you could elaborate a little bit more on a proposal that is very popular with a lot of people here, and just how exactly you would make the no tax on tips policy were in terms of the greater budget?
Yes, sir. Yeah, look, I think it's a fair question. Obviously, the government's spending way more money than it takes in right now. And I think that there are so many areas where we can cut wasteful spending. Frankly, stop paying hundreds of billions of dollars in fraudulent Medicare and Social Security claims to illegal aliens, and we can save a lot of money, and we can get back to the American people. But here's what's so important about President Trump's no tax on tips policy. And notice, he comes out with a no tax on tips policy. It was his idea. I was actually there when he came up with the idea and then called a couple of economists and said, all right, give me a sense of how this would work. So he literally just came up with it. And then, of course, we looked into the policy details of how to make it work. And then he issued this proposal, and 4 days later, Kamala Harris came out with it. And if you notice, we're talking a lot about border security. Like 4 days after she became the nominee, she started talking. All of a sudden, Kamala Harris got religion about border security. And I sometimes think that Kamala Harris, the last couple of weeks, she's going to wear a long red tie and a red MAGA hat. And that's going to be her strategy, is just copy everything Donald Trump does. But sir, to answer your question, the details do matter, obviously. But I think that people overestimate the budgetary. What happens is that you have IRS agents harassing casino workers and servers, and it costs a lot of money to harass middle-class people. Why not just give them their money back, fire the IRS agents, and we'll all be more prosperous? So I think a big part of the no taxes on tips policy is not just giving people more of their hard-earned money that they can actually spend on their families and spend on their dreams. It's about stopping this ridiculous tax bureaucracy that harasses middle-class American citizens. Think about this. You've got multi-billion-dollar corporations that ship jobs overseas and use slave laborers, and meanwhile, Kamala Harris's IRS is focused on a middle-class casino worker in Nevada. It's a disgrace. No taxes on tips is going to stop it, and that's why we believe that policy. Next question.
Senator Vance, with respect to the housing proposal, when the Democrats talk about this issue, one of the things they highlight is this alleged idea of giant corporations and big investors buying up houses and thus driving up the price of those houses. I wonder if you'd comment on that with respect to your program and whether or not that would be a factor.
Well, look, first of all, I've been talking about that issue for years, and that's another issue where the Democrats have just copied our talking points in one form or another. Again, we want American homes to go to American citizens, and whether we're talking about an illegal alien or a massive foreign conglomerate, I don't want either one of those groups to own American homes. I want the American people to own American homes. But what I find so preposterous about Kamala Harris's proposals here is, and most of them I think are totally crazy, and some of them she's copied from us. So the ones she's copied from us, obviously I think are a good idea. I can't help but wonder, why aren't you doing it right now? Who is the majority leader of the United States Senate? A Democrat. Who is the president and vice president of the United States? Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. If Kamala Harris really believes that these policies are going to make American citizens more prosperous, she is welcome to try them right now. What I can't get over is a person who runs on promising to do something. She's got a job right now. She ought to do it. And if her ideas are so good, they would help the American citizens now. And it's telling that instead of actually implementing these policies, she just talks about them, because that's what people in Washington do. Career bureaucrats and career politicians who talk about doing things. Donald Trump actually got stuff done in 4 years, and that's why we got to put him back in the White House. Let's do one more question, and then I want to leave you all with a final thought about voter turnout.
On behalf of KPDN Television, thank you so much for this question. As we know, alcoholism and/or addiction does not discriminate based on race, education, socioeconomic status, gender, or anything else. And Clark County has seen an increase in fentanyl fatalities, approximately 297% increase in the last couple of years. What do we do?
Very good question, ma'am. And look, it is a big issue, not just in Clark County, not just in Nevada, but all over the United States of America. And the first and most important thing that we've got to do is close down the border and stop this poison from coming into our country in the first place. And I speak about this issue with a lot of personal experience because, my mom, for so much of my childhood, struggled with addiction in some form or another. It's why my grandmother raised me. Well, I'm standing here, by the grace of God. My mom has been clean and sober for almost 10 years. And that is an amazing grace. But I can't help but wonder, because I've certainly sat by mom's bedside after a bad overdose, wondering whether she would wake up and pray to God that she did. And I can't help but wonder if the poison that Kamala Harris has led into this country today was in the country 15 years ago, would my mom still be here? And would she have gotten the incredible opportunity to be a great grandmother to our three kids? I think the answer is no. And it's one of the reasons why we've got to stop this poison from coming into our country is to everybody out there. There is hope on the other side of addiction, but only if you get a second chance, and fentanyl is taking second chances away from our citizens. Think about this, 100,000 people dying of overdoses. Most of those overdose deaths every single year are caused by fentanyl. Can you imagine if a foreign country invaded the United States of America and was killing 100,000, mostly young people? We would go to war over it. So why don't we do that right now? Why don't we go to war with the Mexican drug cartels that are killing our people by the thousands? But man, to your point, obviously the immigration part, I think, is the biggest part of it because that's where so much of the fentanyl comes in. We've also got to help people get into recovery and stay in recovery, and that's an important thing too. And I think pretty much everybody who's ever known somebody who's dealt with addiction will tell you, they get back on the horse and sometimes they fall off, and sometimes they get back on for 10 years. Sometimes they get back on the horse for a month and then they fall off. We have got to give people the opportunity to keep on trying to get better. Because I really believe, as a person who's made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I think most of us have, the American dream is not just a dream for people who did everything right all the time. The American dream is a dream of second chances, of fighting and trying again and again and again. So let's fight for second chances for our people. And one of the ways that you got to do that is, look, I'm a person of faith. I imagine a lot of you are people of faith, whether Christian, Jew, or Muslim. We love you. But if you're not a person of faith, you're welcome in this common sense coalition too. But you've got a lot of folks on the ground, especially people of faith, who would love to do detox to help people who are dealing with drug addiction. Or you have church groups that would love to set up small addiction counseling and recovery centers. Right now, the federal government makes it way too hard for people of faith who love their communities to get involved in helping their neighbors. Donald Trump and I want to be friends and allies of anybody that's trying to make their community better, because that's the American way, and I love that about this country. But Kamala Harris has this attitude that, well, if you're a Christian and you're trying to do charitable work, well, don't even come knocking, because you're not welcome to the United States of America. Whether you're Christian, Jew, non-believer, if you're trying to help your neighbors, you've got a place in Donald Trump's Republican Party, and we hope that we can earn your support. I mean, on that note, look, my friends, I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win the battle. I think we're going to win the whole country. And I'm feeling good about it. If y'all get out there and vote, okay? And not just you, but your friends and your family. So I'm going to make 3 requests of you. Okay, look, this matters not just for President Donald Trump and hopefully future Vice President me. It matters. Look, if we win Nevada by a few points, I think we're dealing with Senator Sam Brown instead of Senator Jackie Rose. That's a big thing. That's got a pretty nice ring to it, right? Sam's really tall. That's the one thing I don't like about Sam, though. I don't want anybody in Washington. I'm 6'2". I don't want anybody taller than me. But look, Sam he's a once in a generation guy. If we don't take this seat this time with that candidate, you guys may have a Democrat in that chair for the next 20 years, right? So here's what I want to ask you for. Okay, number one, there's a website. I want you to go to it. Write it down if you have to, but I'm going to repeat it. SwampTheVoteUSA.com. That's SwampTheVoteUSA.com. Because as President Trump says, we have got to swamp the vote. I don't want to just win. I want to win by such a big margin that we're going to bed early on Tuesday night. And we know that we've won. We know that we've done what we need to do. Okay, so go to that website. You check your registration. You can check how to get involved in some of our voter turnout efforts. You can know where your polling location is. SwampTheVoteUSA.com. That's number one. Number two, I want you to use whatever method of communication, whether it's social media, text messaging, email, call. I want you to commit to talking about what you saw here today, and most importantly, why you are voting for Donald Trump and why you're not voting for Kamala Harris. Because we're never going to have Kamala Harris or her allies in the corporate media telling the truth, but we can tell the truth to one another, and that person-to-person power is how we're going to win the 2024 election. Again, not just for President Trump, but for folks like Sam Brown. So talk to people. Get out there and talk to people about why you're voting for Trump. And here's the third thing that I want you to do. I want you to get out there and I want you to vote 10 times. The legal way. Here's how you vote 10 times the legal way. You take yourself to the polls and you make sure 9 of your friends and family go along with you. That is the legal way to vote 10 times. Now, and look, I say this as somebody who strongly prefers election day over election season, but as President Trump says, it is what it is. We are now in a world where early voting, mail-in voting, election day voting, these are all the methods that we have to vote. And if Kamala Harris's team is using everything, and we're only using one of those methods of voting, then we're going to get killed. So we've got to get out there, however you can, early voting, in mail, early in person, going on election day, whatever makes the most sense to you, get out there and let's try to bank as many votes by election day as possible. I was talking to your great GOP chairman earlier today. And we're talking about how usually Republicans go into election day down thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of ballots. We have a chance in Nevada of going into election day with Republicans up by thousands of ballots. So let's do what we can and get people out there voting. You don't have to love everything about our election system. I don't, but we've got to play the game by the rules that have been given to us. And if we do that, my friends, we're going to win. Take your friends and family out there to vote. Remember, the country is depending on us. The country is depending on you to give the United States the leadership it deserves. God bless you. We're going to do it in 13 days. Thank you all for having me. It's good to see you in Nevada.